Welcome to Tuesday Newsday, your #1 resource for the entire week's worth of VR news. And we've got a wacky week of VR. Hand tracking has finally come to the Valve Index. Samsung is coming back into the VR industry, this X-Ray Vision headset. Meta is canceling 2 out of its 3 next VR headsets set to release. And I'll just smush in my hands-on first impressions of the PSVR 2 over the past week. Since, well, I'm still working on that review, but I've got a lot to say, good and bad. Either way, we've got a lot to get through, so let's just get right into the news. Let's start this week's video with a few really fun things before we get into the bad news. So if you've ever watched Black Mirror, this is about to sound a lot like a plotline from one of its episodes, which honestly, half of our headlines in 2023 sound like a Black Mirror episode anyways, but I digress. An upcoming application, Whist, allows you to essentially save 3D memories, or little 3D videos to re-experience in VR, allowing you to zoom in, walk around, play at whatever rate, essentially relive a memory however you want in VR, which, while not necessarily novel, is really cool. But Whist is putting it all into one package with an application that just streamlines everything, which is awesome because otherwise it's kind of a pain to do this. And according to Whist, the app is still in early stages, and unfortunately an iPhone is required. You just need the LiDAR to do this quickly and easily. But I will be keeping my eyes on this, and I have a feeling that we'll be seeing a lot more of this type of thing popping up in the near future. So MIT has built a wild device, an XR headset that essentially allows you to see through objects. And before you get too many ideas, this isn't a headset that actually emits X-ray radiation. That would be ridiculous, right? Instead, it's a highly modified HoloLens that spatializes RF tagged objects. So you can imagine in a storage facility where you have hundreds of boxes with hundreds of thousands of things in them. As long as everything is tagged, you just throw on something like this and you'll be directed to exactly where the object you're looking for is within augmented reality. And this is pretty early on, but I think you can immediately see the use cases. And honestly, I wish I had something like this at home with how often I misplace things, but there's still a lot of work to be done on this. The researchers stating that this is really the first of its kind in the world. And while not a finished product, it is, quote, a blueprint for how you would design an AR headset with X-ray vision in the future, end quote. But now we can talk about some pretty huge things happening in the world of Meta. And before we talk about these canceled headsets, let's just go over a few things. Starting off with a feature that I am incredibly excited for, and it is nothing flashy, it's just some quality of life improvements. How many times have you wanted to play a VR game, you throw on your Quest 2, you start up the app, and then you realize that the one app you want to play needs an update? That probably happens every single time I went to go grab my headset, and it's incredibly frustrating, but it's apparently fixed now. Finally, app and software updates will actually automatically update when you're not using the headset, either on its own or by triggering it from a phone. This is just a huge friction issue solved, hopefully. We'll have to see if it's actually fixed. Moving on, you may remember this whole debacle where the Federal Trade Commission sought out to block Meta's acquisition of their 6th or so VR studio Within, the developers behind Supernatural. The case was created by antitrust regulators because this acquisition looked to be the tipping point of Meta's anti-competitive practices within the VR industry, partaking in what they call a buy or bury scheme to control the market. And well, the court has sided with Meta on this one, meaning that the acquisition will go through. And the whole reasoning is pretty interesting. The idea behind the suit was that Meta bought Supernatural instead of building their own fitness app. But since the FTC couldn't come up with any evidence that Meta ever attempted to build a fitness app to start with, the entire case fell through. And yeah, it's honestly just a weird kind of weak case anyways. It was kind of weak to start with, but I just have to play devil's advocate here after having a few conversations. I think that Meta winning this case was actually good news. VR's in a very, very rough spot right now, and it's really hard on VR startups. And to be honest, it would be really bad for VR if this acquisition was actually blocked. It's sad but true because a lot of companies out there that are making VR things in general are pretty much only getting funded because their VCs hope that Meta acquires them at some point in time and they make money. So if Meta stops acquiring VR companies because the Federal Trade Commission wins a case against them, well, there goes all the funding for all the companies that are building things with the hope that Daddy Zuck just buys you out at the end of the day. And that was a way oversimplified breakdown, maybe even to its detriment of the argument, but it is sadly truer than I would like to admit. But moving on. You may remember just a few months ago when it was revealed that Meta was planning on 4 upcoming VR headsets. One was the Quest Pro, which already released, then was the Quest 3 later this year, and the other 2 being Cardiff and Hermosa. One of them supposed to also release this year. And well, staying true to the massive cutbacks of the entire VR industry lately, industry reports state that 2 out of the next 3 headsets have been completely canceled. And while it seems that a Quest 3 will still be coming later this year, that headset already having been heavily leaked as basically just an upgraded Quest 2 with color pass-through, the other 2 canceled headsets seem to be a Quest Pro 2 and a Quest 3 Lite or Plus, not entirely sure which one. But I'd probably bet on it being a Quest 3 Lite. Basically, a Quest 3 is sold with no controllers, relying on only hand tracking just for a much cheaper price. And you know what? Honestly, I think this is good more than anything. I was pretty shocked when that original news broke about 4 headsets being released within a couple of years. Just seems like a lot of excess and confusion. And I'm also not too sure about this yearly upgrade routine for VR headsets. I don't think we're quite ready for that yet. But this also means that if you're currently a Quest 2 user, your headset will likely stay relevant for even longer than we thought. And this also means that higher end VR headset projects like the Quest Pro will probably happen far less frequently, as I have a feeling that the Quest Pro not only didn't sell well, but seeing that it's not even popped up on 1% under the Steam VR hardware survey means that the Quest Pro probably sold so poorly that Meta is completely changing their strategies hardware-wise. And beyond the price, I'm not entirely sure why the Quest Pro would have sold that poorly. I mean, VR enthusiasts spend lots of money on hardware all the time, and for all we know, the Steam hardware surveys aren't correct right now. And honestly, the Quest Pro could have sold more than we think, but I have a feeling it did really poorly. But hey, good news. If you're a Quest 2 owner, you're chilling right now because Meta has significantly cut back on their hardware ambitions for the future, so you're probably good with what you got for now. And I guess we'll just be keeping our eyes out for the Quest 3. But now it's time for a meme break. The Echo VR community has to be some of the most dedicated people I have ever seen. After having their game ripped away from them with pretty much nothing they can do about it, they've tried pretty much everything they can to save Echo. They've contacted Critical, staged protests in VR, had petitions, and well, now at 11:30 tomorrow morning, they even hired a plane to fly a banner over the Meta HQ with hashtag Save Meta on it. Now, that's dedication. And now, back to the news. Okay, let's finally talk about the PSVR 2. I've been waiting for this. Okay, so I'm sorry I don't have a full review out yet. Like, pretty much everyone already has posted a video, but to be honest, I've just been playing it way too much. I've been trying to really take it in. I didn't get an early review unit or anything, so I've only had it for a few days, but I've been having a crazy blast, albeit there's some pretty massive issues that like nobody's talking about, but those issues aren't really a deal breaker for me. And I'll just say why, because on Sunday, I got a wheel and pedal setup for Gran Turismo 7, and I ended up playing for like 6 hours straight. It was insane. I can't even remember the last time I got sucked into something like that. But the PSVR 2 made me realize that VR headset reviews right now just are kind of weird. Like, people, myself included, are so fixated on paper specifications and numbers, but clearly that doesn't represent the experience, and it almost never does. So I'm working on a bit of a different review style. But for now, I can give you my base reactions. The PSVR 2 kind of feels cheap and plasticky. It's not bad, but it just feels like a cheap toy, at least compared to most other headsets, even the Quest 2. However, the comfort is pretty good, even though I will be looking for some comfort accessories in the future. The lenses and displays are awesome, and I'll save my thoughts regarding the displays for the full review, but in general, the OLED contrast ratio and colors are just beautiful, albeit with a big problem, and this is what I was talking about earlier, and this is the one thing that like barely anybody's talking about. There's really bad Mira, or what pretty much looks to be a screen door effect like giant filter over everything. It's pretty bad, and it's really noticeable, and I don't know how any of the early reviewers didn't see this side effect, but apparently this is a side effect of OLED displays, and it really has taken me a lot to get over it. Maybe I'm just too picky, I don't know, but the thing that's been really carrying the whole PSVR 2 is the software. Resident Evil and Horizon are awesome, even if Horizon's gameplay is super simple. The game I've been really getting lost in, however, is Gran Turismo 7, and I'm not much of a sim racer. That's just not something I do very often, but holy cow, I've been really enjoying it, and it's something that I'll definitely have to make a video on in the future. Yeah, so all in all, I've been enjoying it, but it's really not perfect. And even though I've been having a really great time, there are some downsides, and I still got to take in all these thoughts. So stay tuned for that full PSVR 2 review. I just didn't want to leave leave you guys hanging too long on my impressions. So if you're a Valve Index user, I've got some really good news for you and a fun little project to mess around with. Finally, you're going to be able to use those front cameras for something other than accidentally selecting it as your webcam. And in fact, this solution not only brings hand tracking to the Index, but also works for all sorts of other headsets. Rift S, Reverb G2, other Windows mixed reality headsets. This is Monato's Mercury hand tracking, a solution that's been in the works for over a year now that uses cameras on a multitude of headsets to estimate hand poses like you'd expect. And I haven't tried it out yet, but if you're interested, there's all sorts of documentation on the project down below. It seems like it's not quite perfect and there's a lot of jank to it, but when has there not been jank in a VR project like this? And while it does have a Windows Steam VR driver, it is primarily built for Linux, it seems, but reportedly people have even gotten this hand tracking to work with things like VR chat, and that's without any Ultraleap or additional hand tracking modules, so pretty cool. As we talked about last week, a ton of companies are essentially leaving the VR/metaverse industry, and it goes the full range. Some massive companies like Microsoft and HP are reportedly heading out, and some smaller companies are leaving as well. But not everything is doom and gloom. Samsung may be returning to the XR world after multiple years away from manufacturing any VR headsets. And in fact, contrary to some other publications last week, Google may actually have a pretty heavy hand in Samsung's comeback, with Samsung, Qualcomm, and Google all working together to make some new line of XR devices. It could be a VR headset, it could be something closer to a Quest Pro or a Vive XR Elite, or it could be something like Xiaomi's new AR glasses. Really, we have no clue. And I mean, shoot, with Apple entering the ring soon with their XR device, it seems like a better time than any to get Samsung Galaxy VR headsets together or some Pixel headset. And in fact, Samsung and Google have already worked together on wearable technology. The last Pixel watch was a collaboration between them two. So nothing's really out of the realm of possibility. And at the end of the day, more competition from serious players is more than welcome. But now it's time for question of the week from X-Tech. Do you think from all the leaks we have now that the Quest 3 will be worth buying? And honestly, I'm not too sure. I'll definitely be getting one, but if all it adds is color pass-through and a slight CPU upgrade, honestly, I don't really see it being worth that much of an upgrade unless you're somebody that likes to upgrade very often. We're seeing now that it's seemingly thinner and lighter, and I'm sure we'll have an optic stack upgrade as well. So if better visuals are something that you're really wanting, then maybe, but without the addition of face or eye tracking, and as long as no Quest 3 exclusives come, there's kind of no reason to really upgrade unless you just want the newest tech that's flashy. But that was question of the week. Make sure to leave your own down below and I may just answer yours next. So were you looking forward to some controllerless Quest or Quest Pro 2? I definitely see the potential there, but you know, it's probably better to not oversaturate the headset market, at least any more than it already is. But anyways, we've got a crazy week of uploads as long as I can get it all done, so stay tuned this week. I wanted to say thank you to all of my Patreon supporters, especially my Omegas. I couldn't do any of this without you. So don't forget to like this video if you loved it, subscribe if you want more of this, and hit that freaking bell if you just can't live without it. Much love, Thrill out.